Welcome to the Joya Life podcast, episode number 9, where we're joined today by Gabriela Rosa, who just recently got her doctorate from Harvard University in public health, specializing in fertility. And we're going to get down and dirty with all the things that makes the sperm swim well and the eggs be healthy so that our DNA can be passed on in a really great way to the next generation. So let's get into it.
Thank you for having me.
So excited today to talk to Gabriela Rosa, who is a doctor of public health.
I am now a doctor of public health. Indeed, yeah.
With a specialty in fertility.
Yes, absolutely. 25 years and counting.
Wow.
I've started seeing patients, babies, go to university and the army, and I'm like, okay, I'm prepared for this.
Wow. Wow.
So yeah, it's been a while. It's been a minute.
But when we talk about fertility here, we're not talking about test tube stuff, although you're a doctor.
We can talk about all sorts of things.
But in terms of your specialty, it's more around...
Well, we help couples overcome infertility, recurrent miscarriage, and failed treatments. So people usually come to us. It would be nice to say that they come to us in the beginning of their journey. It's unusual for that to be the case, unless they already know that there are issues that they're dealing with and that they are going to have difficulty and they want to shortcut a bit of that challenge that they already perceive. But most of the people that come to me, on average, in fact, this was the master's thesis for my master's in public health at Harvard, where I looked at our success rate of the fertility breakthrough program. And what we found was that on average, people were coming to me after 4 years of infertility and multiple failed IVF cycles, as well as recurrent miscarriage. So I'm almost the end of the line for a lot of people.
But that's not where you want to be though, is it?
Well, this is why I went to do my doctorate, because I realized that in order to change the conversation in the healthcare system, we needed to be able to understand how the healthcare system actually works, Yeah. And so public health is all about that, is how do you scale interventions that are effective, not just for the individual, because obviously for 25 years, I can say that, yes, this is effective for my patients. But then how do you translate that into something that is effective on a population level? And so that was was the piece that I felt that I was missing, that I needed to understand more. And that's where we're at. I just graduate this year. So
yes, I know.
Very
congratulations.
Well
done.
Yeah, thank you.
But following your journey on social media, it's been really good to see. Yeah. Just to get into Harvard itself was not.
Come
to Harvard.
It'll be easy, they said.
So just to get in, I know that was such a big thing, and it was so exciting to kind of follow that. And then to do your master's and then to take it all the way to a doctorate, I think is tremendous. So.
So it's funny because you think like, you've done a doctorate. In fact, that you have to apply. It's a 4% acceptance rate. And, so there's a lot of things that go into doing that, which has been very rewarding. I wanted to have another lens from which to assess fertility. And that was the scientific lens, very deeply.
Well, and that's what I must admit, when I first met you and you talked about, helping couples conceive more naturally, I kind of felt, is this just a bit kind of like general life advice or a bit woo-woo or whatever? And then it's like, we're going to Harvard.
It's like, wait a second, maybe there's something to this after all.
Okay. Oh, we're going to the doctorate level. Oh, wow, this is proper, really, really good stuff, which is brilliant to hear.
It's cool.
But we do see developed countries across the world where fertility rates are dropping. Why is that?
Look, it's interesting.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean,
do you now know?
There is a data point to this, which is really interesting, which is the fact that, the population level that's like the people who are not having babies are the 15 to 19-year-olds.
Right.
That before this population fertility rate started to drop were the ones that were having the most number of babies. So unplanned pregnancies was the biggest
surprise pregnancies.
Yay. And teen pregnancies. So a lot of what we're hearing is like, fertility rates are dropping around the world. It's true, and it's for teenage pregnancies mostly.
Right.
So are people having more difficulty conceiving these days? according to the data, there are some really interesting pieces to this, and it's nuanced. So we know that over the last 60 years, we have had a 60% drop in male fertility in terms of sperm parameters. So sperm count.
Sorry, 60%
60% drop.
And sorry, what time period are we talking about here?
60 years, the last 60 years.
My lifetime. I'm 58 now.
There you go.
Wow.
So, what used to be a normal semen analysis 60 years ago is 60% less now.
Wow.
Okay. So basically now we expect that for natural conception, you need at least 20 million sperm.
Yep.
So ultimately, are we seeing a drop in fertility, i.e. people becoming more infertile? Not yet if we look across the population. So we're literally saying that 1 in 6 couples experiences difficulty conceiving.
Yeah.
So that is a data point and a statistic that has been pretty stable for the time that I have been practicing in the last 25 years.
Yeah.
What we do see in terms of trends, though, is now, even though teen pregnancies are going down, women in their 40s are having more babies than in previous generations.
Yeah.
And that is a function of a social determinant, right, of what happens in terms of fertility, because as we were talking about just before, most people now are more conscious in terms of like, okay, when do I want to start a family? Am I prepared to have a child or children? Can I afford to have children? And I think much more than any other generation, these last 2 generations are questioning whether they will have children at all based on affordability. And so that is something that we are definitively seeing. People literally deciding, you know what, it's expensive to have children. They last a long time. So we might decide we might decide that we will skip that as part of our life experience. So some people are choosing that as a way of life. And then you have people who are still very much into the continuation of their family bloodline, their kind of legacy, so to speak. And so, but even in those terms, even in those types of situations, we are seeing people delay childbearing because of career, because of studies, because of many different, reasons that ultimately are more social than biological or physiological.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning that, it's more a choice of either using contraception or not having unprotected intercourse because I want to prioritize my studies or because I want to prioritize my career development.
Okay.
Which is fair. I mean, for women are disproportionately disadvantaged when it comes to having children. Really, at the end of the day, because we have to bear the child.
Yeah.
We have to breastfeed the child.
Yeah.
And, and look, I have 2 children and I have an amazing support system, and still it is something that you have to consider. What is the timing in my life in which I will put aside some of my goals to be able to focus on others? Yeah. So I think that's important to consider.
Is the aging issue causing fertility problems or?
Look, age is associated with decreased chance of conception.
It is.
For men and women.
Right. Okay. Is there a cutoff?
Well, and this is the thing. So it used to be believed that only female age mattered for the ability to conceive and keep a pregnancy to term. We now understand through scientific experiments and observation and all of these things that that's not actually true. That male fertility declines with age as well. And fertility from a perspective of sperm quality actually is impacted for a man every year above the age of 35.
Right. Wow.
Okay. So, and over 40, we have, there is more risks associated with conception for men and women.
Yeah.
So, whether it's birth defects or, inability to conceive, inability to keep a healthy pregnancy to term. So age is a factor. It's not the only factor. Yeah. And, age in its own, I think that it's a little bit of a cop-out that the healthcare system uses because it's a proxy to biochemical and biological factors within the body that start to not work as well as it could because of our lifestyle choices.
Yeah.
And so it's associated that, okay, because as we age, we become more insulin resistant, because as we age, we start to deteriorate in terms of our health, age then becomes the shortcut.
Right.
Or the kind of like, okay, it's because of your age. Well, actually, let's disentangle that, because if you have somebody that is 35 and really focuses on being as healthy as they can possibly be, they exercise, they eat well, they don't drink, they don't smoke, they don't do drugs, they are going to biologically be at a better state when it comes to reproduction than somebody who's at the same age, who drinks, who smokes, who does drugs, who doesn't eat well, who has lots of trans fats and processed foods and, all of those things. So you can't necessarily say that age is the driver here on its own. There will be things that you can do that are modifiable factors to improve your chances of conceiving and keeping a healthy pregnancy to term, because getting pregnant is only really the first step. Keeping a pregnancy to term is a whole other thing in its own right. And fertility is a team sport. So it's not a situation where you can say, oh, it's a woman's issue. Actually, 50% of the reason as to why miscarriages occur or somebody has a difficulty conceiving or even IVF cycles failing is because of sperm parameters and the male factor. So we have to address both sides of the equation.
Yeah, which I think is fantastic. I love the idea that age is less of a factor if you do the right thing. So you've hinted at some of the right things.
Yes, and I will clarify this a little bit because you see, here's what happens. Women do have a finite window of opportunity to have babies. So it's not like, you are 45 and you're doing all of the right things and you're going to have the same chance of conceiving as you were at 35. Yeah. That's not the fact, because the reality of it is that women will hit a natural end of fertility with her own eggs, which is called menopause.
Yes.
Right? So at menopause, women can no longer reproduce. Men will be able to still have sperm being formed and matured. And if they couple up with a 20-year-old, like Hugh Hefner, for example, he will be able to still produce offspring. Yeah. Okay. In most cases, even at 90. So people translate that to mean that you can be any age as a man.
Right.
And get a woman pregnant.
So we've been sort of conditioned to think that if Hugh Hefner can do it at 90, then I can do it at 58.
Precisely. And that's not exactly the case.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you have a partner that's the same age as you, so the research shows that for a 40-year-old woman, if her partner is the same age, she has less of a chance of conception than if her partner is 20 years younger.
Right.
So you see, age matters.
So if a 40-year-old woman really wants to get pregnant, maybe she needs to find a younger dude who's either prepared to just...
I mean, there probably is a reason for this whole cougar vibe movement, right? So, biologically
I'm also fascinated by the... I just want to try and put two things together in my mind because I'm not quite clear, because you also talked about carrying a pregnancy to term.
Yes.
Let's look at the guy's perspective on this. What role does the guy have in terms of the pregnancy? So we've conceived, so that worked. Now, what role from there on does the guy have in increasing the probability of taking the pregnancy to term? Is there anything on
100%, 100%.
I'm fascinated by this.
And so here's the thing. You can have a basic standard test, which is a semen analysis, which will look at sperm count, motility, is it moving? Is it swimming? Ideally, is it swimming forward? Right? Because if it's just going around in circles, that's not a good sign.
That's not going to work.
Is it moving? Is it swimming? Is it shaped well? Okay.
Right.
So those parameters are also, again, they're shortcuts. They're proxy markers to what we really want to understand, which is the function of the sperm, which is like how healthy is the DNA within the sperm. Oh. We don't see that under, standard testing. We don't see that via just doing a basic semen analysis. And so what happens is that when you have a semen analysis come back and you're told, oh, your sperm is great. Well, there's a lot in that statement, right? Because you're not actually seeing what is the DNA fragmentation and the damage to the DNA within the sperm. And you're not actually seeing also, does this sperm have the ability to fertilize an egg and to actually create an embryo.
Yeah.
What I see a lot of times, especially when people go through IVF cycles that don't work, a woman will go, they will do the cycle, they will be able to collect 20 eggs, and the couple ends up with no embryos. 20 mature eggs, if you have really good quality sperm and good functioning sperm with good DNA, you should end up with several embryos.
Yeah.
And when you start having failure of embryos atreasing and dying at day 3, you know that that's not an egg quality issue. You know, that's a sperm issue. And most of the time, again, a lot of that information gets summarized, and what people will then take home and understand versus what their doctor actually means when they're trying to explain that there is something going on here. That gets lost in translation a lot, you know. And so women hear that, oh, it's an egg quality issue, or even doctors might say it's an egg quality issue without taking the time to explain exactly what we just went through here right now. And so people then, they assume that, okay, everything is fine with the sperm. We don't have to do anything because the count is high, it's moving, and, you know, it's shaped okay. That's where a lot gets left on the table in terms of opportunity for improvement and making changes that can then yield a baby. So, you know, in terms of your question of when we're looking at, does the sperm have an impact on the ability to keep a pregnancy to term? 100%, because that embryo that is created from that sperm will either be healthier or not as healthy.
Depending on DNA.
Implantation is also going to be affected, because a lot of times when you do again, standard semen analysis, which is the worst possible way of actually assessing fertility, it's important. It's an important part of the workup, but it's not the entire workup. And the healthcare system doesn't reward more testing to understand what the issues are. And that's why a lot of people get diagnosed with unexplained infertility, or unexplained miscarriages, or unexplained failed treatments. It's not that these things are unexplainable or inexplicable. It's that the investigation stopped too short.
Right.
And because the investigation then needs to be paid for by the patient, most doctors assume that the patient doesn't want to pay or doesn't offer it because it's not part of a standard guideline. And so a lot gets left, you know, on the table when people are having difficulty conceiving. People are not told and are not made aware that actually you can dive deeper and you can understand more. And in fact, you need to, if you keep going around in circles, you know, doing all of quote unquote the right things and still ending up with no baby. There's always going to be more questions that you need to ask when that's going on.
Now, so coming back to the point about if couples are going to want to conceive, if you had to give a top sort of 3 or 5 things, if would age be even a factor on that? Would you probably start before you're at the end of the game? Would that
if you have that option, by all means, you would want to think about, okay, do consider what it is that you want to, at the very least. And this is actually, I had a conversation this week with a patient who was unaware of her fertility status, and she did some testing based on my recommendation because she was, you know, a friend. And so I said, look, just go and do these tests just to see how things are. And, you know, she was thinking about starting to try in about 2 years. The results come back and she's got very low ovarian reserve for her age. She's 33, right?
Really?
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, here are your options. At this rate, you are going to not have the luxury of time and think that you can do this in 5 years from now. So you now, right this second, need to decide, how are you going to go about this? Because there are lots of options. 2026 is an amazing time to be alive, let me tell you, because you have lots of options in terms of how to approach fertility if you are open to the avenues that are available, right? Some people are absolutely only open to natural conception. Yep. And they say, if I can't conceive naturally, I will not engage or want to do IVF. Other people say, I will do IVF, but I would never do donor egg. Other people say donor embryo is okay, something that I would do, but I would never do, you know. So people have values and preferences that they will have to choose when they get news like this, which is, okay, you need to make a decision now whether you would consider, if you don't have a baby now, what that means, if you don't stop everything and focus on having a baby, you need to consider whether you would be willing to use donor egg in the future, because that might very well be the only option that you have in 5 or 10 years from now. So that's one consideration. The other consideration is, okay, do you want to perhaps embryo bank? So if you're in a solid relationship with a person that you know you're going to be with, for a period of, for the foreseeable rest of your life, let's put it that way, then you may decide that, okay, I will go and embryo bank. I will go and do IVF. I'll make embryos, I'll freeze them, and I will get them put inside when I'm ready to have a baby. That's an option, but it's also a tricky option, because if the relationship doesn't last, I've seen situations in my clinic where couples who were married went and embryo banked, then they divorced, and then the woman wants to use the embryos. The man's like, hell no. You are not going to use the embryos that were made with my sperm, and therefore,
they're half mine, aren't they? Yeah.
There is an ethical consideration. And
who gets the sperm in the divorce?
Who gets the embryo in the divorce? Wow. And so if it was just the sperm, well, that's one.
Sorry, embryo bank. So that's when
embryos where we got the egg and the sperm, and we have an embryo. Okay. We have a baby in the making. Right. And so in a situation like that, where you have two people who have split up, and the man is like, yes, we have embryos, but it's my sperm, I'm not going to let you use it. Those embryos have to be destroyed. So unless you have a legal agreement written up
to say
who gets what and what happens.
A prenup on the
prenup on the embryos. Exactly. Wow. So, so all of that are considerations that most people don't think about. And then of course.
But I didn't even know that, because I'd heard of the idea of like freezing your eggs or freezing your sperm.
Well,
I didn't realize that you could actually freeze embryos as well.
And this is the thing. Freezing eggs is not really that effective when it comes to actually freezing eggs for having a baby down the track, because eggs, unlike embryos, they don't thaw very well.
Oh.
Even in 2026.
You can't just whack them in the microwave.
No, you can't. And so because they don't defrost very well compared to embryos, you actually end up losing a lot of eggs that then you can't use. So, you might have 25 eggs if you collected them at the age of 38, and you might need 25 eggs for a 60% chance of having a baby.
Wow.
And to get 25 eggs at 38, you're probably going to have 2-3 IVF cycles. So it's not one cycle, 25 eggs, we're done and dusted with our baby. There's a lot of steps that happen. But, and so that's...
Whereas freezing embryos is kind of you've already done...
You've done a lot of the steps. It still doesn't mean that you're going to transfer that embryo and that's going to yield a baby, but you're much further forward than you just have an egg, and then you've got to figure out what to do with that egg. So that is ultimately what it comes down to. And so in this kind of situation where you come back with results and you're looking at it and going, okay, I've got a lowered ovarian reserve. I'm not exactly ready to have a baby right now, but is that something that I'm going to have to now prioritize over everything else if my life plan is to have children?
Yes.
You see?
So the starting point. And we also know that there's a growing number of women particularly that are saying, I don't want kids. Although I do wonder whether some of them change their mind later.
I think lots of people change their mind. And I think a lot of the fact that people say, whether they're women or men, that they do or don't want to have kids is more the fact where they are in their life, what they're prioritizing at that point in their life, and also what partner they have or don't have at that point in their life. Because think about it, if you're in a relationship that you don't think is going to last, or it's not the person that you see yourself with in 30 years from now, you are not going to want it. So you almost protect yourself by saying, you know what, I'm not going to have children because one, I'm running out of time. Two, I'm not in the right relationship and I don't want to. It's a choice. I don't want to.
Babies.
No, I don't want to actually go and find somebody else and figure out, it's a lot.
It's a protection mechanism. So coming back then, if we want to conceive naturally and if we want to have babies,
yes.
What are the top sort of things that we
look? I always say to my patients and anybody who, I have a free program that I run that I have been running for 15 years called the Fertility Challenge. The whole purpose of the Fertility Challenge is to answer that question and to get people implementing. But when I have this conversation... We must post
a link for the Fertility Challenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
In this, because I think it's just a really important
thing to free
share.
and people should definitely be aware.
As soon as it's on their plan to have a baby, take the fertility
I would
challenge.
say 2 years before.
Yeah, but I mean, what I'm saying, you have to have some sort of, people typically start off, I often, because I talk to people about buying property, but I start off with, well, what's your plan for a family? Do you want to have kids? And they'll often go, yeah, we do, but maybe, and we say, is this in the 1 to 2, 3 to 10 or 10 year plus? I say, well, it's in the plan, but it's in the 10 year plus bracket, or it's in the 3 to 10 bracket.
Probably the 1 to 2 year bracket is where you want to do the fertility challenge. You know, before, when
you want to do the fertility challenge in the 1 to 2 year bracket if babies are in the 10 year.
No, I think that, you know, look, at the end of the day, and this is what it comes down to, you want to know your fertility status now.
Yeah.
Full stop. If you're trying, if you're not trying, if you think that one day you might want to have children, because you know what? You might go and do a semen analysis and come back with no sperm. And as a result of that, go, you know what? I better go and do a karyotype check to make sure that I don't have some kind of genetic variance. And you might have Klinefelters and you never will have the opportunity to have a baby. And you don't know that until
you'd be better off finding that out in your 20s or early 30s.
Absolutely.
Than finding out at 38 and 39 when you think this is my last chance to have kids.
Because that also then changes the frame from which you operate from in your life. Because if you've made a decision based on knowledge and data and information that, okay, this is not going to be the path that I'm going to go through in my life, there's going to be this other path, this other journey that I'm going to go on. It just makes life simpler, you know, in so many ways. And so I think that sometimes people are afraid to get that information, to get that knowledge and that understanding. But actually for me, it has been one of the most freeing things, because when I was 18 years of age, I was told by a doctor, by a gynecologist, that I would never have children because I had what he called polycystic ovarian disease. Ooh. And so I was like, am I going to die? Like, that was my first question. It sounds very, you know. So I was
19.
Like, I was 18.
18.
So he says this and I'm like, literally I'm thinking, because he literally told me to call him to get results, right? And he's telling me this over the phone. And the first, and I knew nothing about fertility at that point. First thing that crosses my mind is like, hang on, am I going to die? Like, I literally said to him, I said, is this really serious? Like, am I going to die? And he goes, no, you're probably just never going to have children. I'm like, oh, that's okay then. You know,
not so bad
as an 18-year-old, I'm like thinking, I was never the person who was like dreaming from the age of 8 that I would get married and have babies and, you know, take care of a household. That was never my dream. And lots of people have that dream.
And let's face it, at 18, 19, almost nobody has that as part of it.
Well, some people do. Some people do. Yeah. And so, but that was not me. Yeah. Right? And so for me, it was like knowing that information, literally the second that he said that to me, I was like, okay, I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. And if it doesn't happen, I'll just focus on my career. That's fine. Yeah. You know, like, so it gave me a sense of peace of mind. And then, of course, later when I met my husband, I basically said, look, there's a possibility. This is something you need to know. Yeah. And of course, it turned out that, you know, I was able to focus on changing it entirely. I was able to conceive my first son naturally after the first try, my second son also naturally after the second try. So clearly his prognosis of my situation wasn't what happened, but because I was aware of it from a very early stage, I lived my life in a way that favored health and favored fertility. Yeah. So I was always conscious of like, okay, let me just make sure that I am as healthy as possible, that I'm doing the right things as far as my body is concerned. Because if I do want to then later have the option to have a family, I will then decide what to do from there with this information. So I think that it's a valuable thing to know your fertility status, your hormone levels, your general health, like just how you would look at your bank balance.
But it is, so then going back to some of the things that come up in the was it the fertility? In
the fertility challenge. So here's what I would say.
Some of the things that we should be doing to kind of give ourselves a better score when we get tested. Good. How can I win the game?
So look, you know, the way that I frame this and the way that I position it to people is right now, no matter what you want to do, you are carrying 50% of the healthy little baby you want to create, whether you're a man or a woman. Yeah. Right. So the key aspect is what I say to my patients: act pregnant now to get pregnant later.
Got you.
And this is really how I approached it. You know, it was like, okay, if I was pregnant right now and knowing that I am carrying 50% of the baby that I want to create, what are the things that I need to start doing or stop doing right now that I would start doing or stop doing if I was pregnant right now?
Yeah. So
now, every single person, exactly, every single person who, if I was to ask, you know, if your partner was pregnant right now, or if you were pregnant right now, what are the things that you would absolutely start doing or stop doing? Most people will have a long list, you know, the length of my arm, of things that they would be able to tell you. No smoking, no drinking,
no drugs,
no exposures to toxins in your environment. You know, you would look at the types of food that you eat. You would sleep, you know, focus on sleeping well, sleeping enough hours, exercising. You know, you would do the things that essentially you already know promote health, right? And so that's what you need to start doing now.
Got you.
And that's how you need to live your life. So those are the things that will enhance your ability to conceive and to keep a healthy pregnancy to term when the time comes. And then, of course, for the people who may be having difficulty, those things are still important.
Yeah.
And they are the foundations upon which we then overlay effective treatment. But effective treatment doesn't happen with intervention. It starts with investigation.
Right.
So getting clarity as to what are we dealing with? Why are we having this issue is the first question that needs to be answered before we start doing things and putting things in place that we don't know are going to be necessary until we actually know what are we dealing with.
But coming back to something you said earlier on about you need to focus on this, it's you kind of need to do it or not do it, not half-ass it. So you can't say, well, I'm not going to drink except on the Friday night when I go out with the boys.
Well, you see, here's the thing. Most people in the general population have a drunken one-night stand and get pregnant. So, you know, and this is something that I hear all the time, you know, when I'm talking to people about the things that they need to do or shouldn't do or whatever, people always come up with, and it's just so boring, you know, because ultimately, if you are the person who has a drunken one night stand and get pregnant, great. But if you're not, comparing yourself to somebody who's completely different to you doesn't take you anywhere. You see? And here's the thing, the people who come to me, that's not their reality. They have very narrow margins upon which to actually have any level of effectiveness when it comes to getting pregnant and keeping a pregnancy to term. Therefore, automatically, they're a different person from the general population.
Yeah.
And so in that situation, you do need to act differently.
Yeah. But it's a bit like, you know, with things like smoking. Oh, this guy lived to be 90 and he was still smoking. It's like, yeah, there's always the outliers.
No, you see, this is the thing. And this is what a lot of people don't recognize. We have all heard of people who have never smoked a day in their life and died of lung cancer.
Yep.
And then people who are chain smokers who don't die of lung cancer. So what is the difference? Those people are very different. Epigenetics is the answer and the reason as to why this happens. Epigenetics, which basically means how a exposure, in this case toxin, right, smoking, affects one person compared to another.
Got you. That's
to do with how your genes respond. And the response is different between different people. That's why we have this kind of variation of, you know, somebody who never smokes a day in their life dies of lung cancer and somebody who's a chain smoker who doesn't. They are affected in different ways. You know, you get the chain smoker who has a heart attack instead, or who has, you know, an aneurysm, or who has whatever else going on with them. And then you have the people who basically, you know, with the slightest of exposure, develops some nasty disease. And so you can't compare yourself because you're not comparable.
Yes.
When it comes to those kinds of situations.
Unique, and if we don't figure out our own story, then we're not going to write it very well.
And when it comes to fertility, it's exactly what needs to happen because, you know, ultimately for you to be comparing, or anybody, right, to be comparing themselves to general population statistics is the wrong approach. Like this morning on Instagram, I do a lot of patient education on Instagram, Gabriela Rosa Fertility. And, you know, I'm having arguments with these people who get pissed off fairly about the fact that they have to do all this work to get pregnant because all these other people, they drink, they smoke, they do drugs, they drink alcohol, they drink coffee, blah, and they don't. Well, I get it, but it's not you. Your story is different, and you have to do other things as a result of, you know, what's going on. So,
and ultimately, you can either gamble and try and do those things and hope that it works anyway, or you're,
and that's the nature of risk,
the fact that you're not
isn't
going
it?
to have the
You know, I'm constantly having to explain risk to people on Instagram. You know, it's like, because something increases your risk of an outcome doesn't mean that you're absolutely going to have that outcome. You might be in the situation where that increased risk doesn't matter to you, but you don't know that in advance. You only know that in retrospect. If you are the one who end up with the birth defect, you're going to be questioning, hang on a second, was it because of that thing that I did?
Yeah.
So do you want to question that? Like, do you want that level of uncertainty in your situation? Most people in hindsight say no, but prospectively go, oh, you know, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I hope I'm the one. So how does stress impact fertility?
It's a great question. I get asked it literally daily. And here's what I say. Stress is a factor because of how it affects the way in which your hormones work right now. But we also have to be aware that people in war zones get pregnant and have babies.
Yep.
Right? So we go back to that same conversation of how one person is affected is different to another person.
Got you.
So a problem is a problem if it's a problem for you.
But then are we generally more you know, you talked before about the 60% drop in sperm count.
Mm-hmm.
Is that because our lives are more stressful or seem to be more stressful?
Look, there are lots of environmental stresses, right? So it's not just physiological stress from a mental health kind of stress.
Yep.
Smoking is a stress on the body.
But we smoke significantly less now than we did.
Yes, but then we also have way more chemical exposures than we had 50 years ago.
Got you.
From our food, from our water, from, you know, all sorts of places. So if you look at even how many more chemicals there are in the environment now, in the drinking water, for example, you know, the amount of toxins in a like metropolitan drinking sample is enormous compared to 100 years ago. Sure, 100 years ago, you had infectious diseases in the water and you would die of some kind of
I'd rather go
dysentery.
back 50 years because we at least had clean drinking and everything was working, and we also had this kind of this high, I mean, sperm count, I'm using that as a proxy because you mentioned it earlier.
Yes.
But it was that staggering, that drop.
Yeah, so, you know, you do have a situation where our environment is becoming more polluted, more toxic. So we have to add more protections. You know, one of the things that I say to people all the time, no matter what you do, get a water filter, reverse osmosis, remineralization capsule in your sink, cook with that water, drink only that water, avoid plastics as much as you can because all of that is
What about mobile phones?
Look, mobile phones, they're becoming less and less potent in their effect. Yes, they are. Electromagnetic radiation and radio frequency are still going to be a factor. But I was actually reading some studies because people were saying, you know, about 5G, mobile phone towers and all of that. Actually, what the data is suggesting is that there is less of a dose of radiation from the towers these days compared to earlier versions of network towers.
Because I was actually going more from the angle of not whether there's, you know, the devices themselves, but actually just the fact that we're spending time looking at something. People are often, you know, good night, darling, and putting it beside their bed.
I think it's a bigger problem what men do, carry mobile phones in their pockets. Right? And so has definitely...
It's one of the reasons I've got a big phone, so I can't put it in my pocket.
There's an absolute correlation between putting mobile phones near your testicles and sperm parameters dropping.
Right.
So, you know, that is a factor for sure.
But what about the stresses of just like, you know, everything's on, we're just being bombarded all the time and our brains are just... going.
Yeah,
you know,
there is
worse
that.
Sleep? Are we getting more stress from those kinds of things as well?
And again, this is the thing, right? Different people will be affected differentially. So overall, yes, it's a good practice to leave your mobile phone away from you. It's a good practice to go out more, to do, you know, these are all good practices, but are they causes of infertility?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's about...
But if you were trying to conceive, would that be something you might go...
You want to address it, for sure. If you're trying to conceive, the one thing that I will absolutely say, an hour before going to sleep is just put away all screens.
Yeah, okay.
You know, like actually give your body...
Even the TV.
Even the TV.
We can't watch the TV.
TV's in the bedroom? Oh my God,
no,
please
don't have TV in the bedroom. But
let's just
no
not...
TVs, no phones in the bedroom.
That's it. No TVs, no phones. You know, that's great practice. Whether you're trying to conceive or not, that's good for your health, right? Your brain health, your aging health, everything. And God knows I need that. And so, you know, the reality...
I need it more.
The reality is that, you know, of course, all of these things are going to be useful. But I think that we also need to understand that we live in a time where we are going to be exposed to those things.
Yeah.
And so we need to be able to moderate and manage them in the best possible way. And when we look at the effect of mobile phones, devices, all of those things, if just that one step of having no mobile phones, no TVs in the bedroom, you know, having a screen curfew an hour before bed, that drastically improves our ability to sleep, our ability to, you know, recover better during our sleep, to recover during to wake up feeling more refreshed.
Yeah,
you know, all of those things are definitely going to play a role. And so, yes, do those things, and also understand that if you are exposed to certain things in your day-to-day, they're not going to be the thing that's going to drastically negatively impact your health or your fertility. It's a balance.
Yeah, got you. But on the Joya Life scorecard, we have a series of statements which you can either strongly agree with, which is a 5, or strongly disagree with a 1, or you could be somewhere in the middle, which is a 3.
Oh my God, Tess.
So for your own from your own perspective, are you on a journey to enjoying a long health span?
100% agree. 5.
5.
Yes.
Fantastic. What are you doing to be on that journey?
Look, the one thing that
I follow you on social media.
Yeah, exactly.
So I've got a good idea.
Exactly. Training is one of my things, right? So weights training, cardiovascular endurance, you know, those are things that I'm very focused on and have been for the last 7 years, like really focused on that. My life revolves around getting good quality sleep. So I wake up very early in the morning, typically anywhere between 4:30 and 6 o'clock in the morning. So by 8 p.m., you will find me cuddled, cozied up in my bed, like, go away, people. You know what? I have a practice before going to bed, which I draw. So,
really?
Yeah, so that's been a recent thing in the last 2 years. So
proper nice drawings, just doodles.
No, like I will do anything. Like I might do like some warm-up exercises, or, you know, like I basically have been doing that more and more. So it's more of an offline activity, you know, so something that's more offline. I used to do a lot of journaling before going to bed as well. I prefer to do that in the mornings now. But yeah, that's kind of my thing. Beautiful. So I'm focused on those areas. And of course, I love my sauna. You know, if you follow me on social media, you know that I'm in that thing at least 5 times a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
An hour, 72 degrees Celsius. Let's go.
Fantastic.
Men shouldn't do that though. Men who are trying to get pregnant
shouldn't do saunas.
No, because that negatively
I've heard that women shouldn't
sperm.
do ice baths.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
But what I will say is that men should definitely avoid saunas when they're trying to prepare for pregnancy. We don't want to cook the little... We don't want to cook the testicles, that cook the sperm. No.
Yeah.
And women should avoid it, by the way, in the second half of the cycle when they're trying to conceive. So that's one thing that they need to be aware of, because the embryo doesn't like high temperatures.
So overall, for a good health span, great. But when you're trying to conceive...
You want to moderate.
Park it. Got you. Does stress negatively impact you, or do you manage it effectively through activities like mindfulness, hobbies, or spending time with loved ones?
No, I would say 5 on that.
Yep.
Like I'm very focused on just...
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I think I've just had to manage. I had to train myself to... Look, I've been working and running a business for 25 years, right? What can I tell you?
Yeah.
You have to moderate and manage your stress.
Yeah.
So I put these strategies in there for this reason.
And do you exercise vigorously at least 150 minutes a week?
Yes.
How many minutes do you reckon you get
I don't know that I count minutes. I do at least 3 spin classes per week, which is 45 minutes each.
Wow.
And then I do 2 to 3 weights training sessions per week.
Yeah.
So my weight training sessions, I don't count in minutes. I count in volume of training.
Yeah, but you're doing 5 sessions at least a week. Yeah, brilliant. Do you sleep for 7 to 8 hours per night? In a constant schedule, going to bed at a constant time?
Yep. 5. That's a 5.
Fantastic. Wow, you're gonna ace this, I think. and then the last one.
Winning the test.
Do you eat a healthy whole foods diet daily?
Yes.
Including a variety of fruits, vegetables, lean protein and whole grains.
So I have a rule.
Very limited processes.
I have a rule, and the rule that I share with my patients is the rule that I follow, which is 10% for the soul. So out of 21 meals in the week, 2 meals in the week are whatever I please. And in those 2 meals in the week, I will go have pizza, go have ice cream, go have, whatever. But you ask my kids and they will tell you that we eat vegetables and protein every night for dinner.
Yeah, fantastic.
And so it's like that pretty much, is the strategy, because I want to train them literally. Not only do I want to make sure that they're having the right nutrition, but I want to train them to actually recognize good nutrition when I'm no longer there to make them eat whatever it is that they're going to eat. So with my kids,
you want them to have good habits, not just do as they're told.
Absolutely. And so with my kids, it's funny because if they say, and they know this, if they say that they don't like something, I cook it more. So that they get used to it. You know?
Next time, shut up.
Well, and so they don't complain usually. They just eat. So, and they do usually tell me that what they don't like, because they know they're going to get it again the next night. So.
One last question before we have to wrap it up. From my personal perspective, obviously I had kids super young and everything was fine for me back then and nice and easy. I think it took 3 weeks to conceive the first one, 4 weeks to conceive the second one, and the third one was a surprise.
Yay.
But I've been vegetarian for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
I've been vegan for about 15. Mm-hmm. If I were a younger version of myself who might make similar food choices, are those food choices compatible with getting pregnant if that's what you want to do? Or does there need to be a lot of adjustment?
There needs to be a lot of adjustments. A plant-based diet is very good for you. It's very healthy, but what is very important is protein intake when we're trying to, optimize fertility, because what happens is every single one of your hormones is made from the building block of protein.
Yeah.
So if we don't have enough protein, enough amino acids in a diet, your body is going to literally eat itself to be able to get those nutrients. And so I don't particularly subscribe for my patients to being vegetarian or vegan, although I don't make them eat meat if they don't want to.
Yeah.
However, what I do is make sure that we test so that we understand their amino acid status, and then we make them supplement.
Yeah.
So whether it's going to be custom supplementation by the amino acids that they're absolutely missing, or whether we're going to give them a very good high quality protein supplement. But there are some challenges with protein supplements these days, and we don't have time to get into it. But what I will say is that you do want to have supplements. If you're going to have protein supplements, that they're third party tested, that they have as few ingredients as possible, that they're as
close to the natural as they could be,
as they possibly can be. And but I really feel for people who either are planning conception or struggling to conceive, that is a very important point of ensuring that you're getting enough quality protein in your day to day.
I mean, I guess I'm blessed that I did take nutrition at school, and I've always taken it very seriously. And I find it completely annoying when I go out for dinner, like I did the other night, and the vegetarian option was cauliflower.
Or pasta.
Or pasta. It's like,
oh my God.
Where is my protein? But certainly cooking at home and the rest of the time, then I do make sure that we get lots of protein.
Yeah.
So I can, if a younger version of myself, I'm over the hill, but a younger version of myself, that being vegan or vegetarian should not really negatively impact them, but they've got some special considerations.
There are special considerations for sure. And I think that you need to reframe that mindset, because The scientists are actually telling us that from now, every decade into the future, we are going to be living a lifespan of an extra decade. So you're not even close to over the hill.
So what I'm eating is fine, but me talking about myself as being over the hill is fine.
We can't, we need to make sure that you're going to be living for at least 100 years if things continue to go the way they are.
I've had a goal of living to be 100 for a long time.
There you go.
So
I think it will be realized.
I do a lot of the right things that you mentioned actually earlier on.
Right.
So thank you so much, Gabriela. That was such a fascinating conversation. I'm still blown away by that 60% drop in sperm count over the last 60 years.
Yeah.
That's frightening. Guys, we have got to lift our game in the way that we look after ourselves and stay healthy. Because if we want to have kids, then it's not just about the woman conceiving and carrying. It's our job to make sure that she gets the best chance of getting there. So if you're in any way interested in conceiving in the next decade, you should be taking the Fertility Challenge so that you can know where you are. And it's been such a great honor to listen to you. Please do take the Joya Life scorecard. You'll see the statements for health and the other questions. And let us know what your score is and how you score in the other areas of your life, like finance and holidays, as well as health. So if you like this podcast, go back and look at the other 8 episodes we've had before this and look out for our next guest that we'll be announcing on social media shortly. And please like and subscribe, where we'll dive into some of these deep topics and figure out how we can get more out of life. Good luck and have a great day.